This is the building where dollars pour in from around the world to make money for companies. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange in Sandton, in the heart of one of the richest square miles in Africa. In this building, 400 listed companies have made over 70 million trades worth billions of rands last year alone. The lady at the helm of this trillion-rand stock exchange, Nicky Newton-King, has been its chief executive for almost 7 years. They've been tough years in unpredictable markets.
So it was a hard year all round in South Africa last year. You could see the oil share off considerably, and that makes it a very difficult environment for investors. It was a year which we were navigating as a country through the beginning stages of feeling quite positive about momentum, and I think eventually recognizing that it's actually a lot harder to get real traction on growth, particularly inclusive growth, than perhaps one's initial sense of optimism held true. And we saw that pain track through the year.
There was a time when the JSE was famous for winning world awards for the best-run stock exchange. In recent years, this crown has slipped. The regulatory slip-ups over Steinhoff in 2017 cost the JSE a bit of credibility and threw it open to question.
I think the JSE is just as guilty to some extent. And in that, what have they done? Companies come and list on your platform. People buy stocks on the JSE because they believe that the JSE has got a platform where people could be held accountable if things go wrong. And JSE has done nothing. Steinhoff hasn't had financials. It hasn't been suspended because the claim is that it would then inconvenience those people who want to get out. But there are smaller companies that have lost a lot less for investors, and they were suspended. So is there a sense of bias? I think there is. Whether justifiably so or not, it's a perception that's out there. It's up to the JSE to correct that perception that they are doing the right thing to protect everybody who's investing on their platform. And I think they cannot, in the Steinhoff instance, they cannot exonerate themselves from being guilty of something.
But Newton-King stands by the decision not to delist Steinhoff.
Firstly, no amount of regulation will prevent somebody who is intent on not complying with things from doing what they wanted to do anyway. We're quite clear that in relation to the regulatory responsibilities we had for the businesses that were listed on the JSE, which were South African businesses, we are quite clear that there is no ball that we dropped there. The questions in relation to Steinhoff and the role of the overseas auditors in that entire group, that's a completely different regulatory framing, got nothing to do with the South African regulators, and so we need to separate these out. Even though Steinhoff International did not meet its South African listings requirements, and we would, if it was primarily listed in South Africa, have suspended it. Okay, we couldn't do that because it's not suspended in Germany, because it would have penalized the South African investors. So it's an incredibly difficult example to have had to work through.
Meanwhile, competition is in the air. New stock exchanges are springing up in the JSE's backyard. A2X is one of 3 competing with the JSE for business. It managed to secure a secondary listing from Naspers, the largest company in Africa, to give the fledgling exchange a big boost. The biggest player on the block seems sanguine about this new competition.
Yeah, competition is hugely exciting, actually. So we're 131 years old. We've actually been competing for all of my only 23 years at the JSE with international markets and the like. This is the first time in the last 3 years that there are actually other exchanges with in the country, bricks and mortar exchanges in the country. It does change the temperature of competition a bit, and we found it incredibly, as I say, exciting, but also really good for our business model. I mean, we have re-examined what services we provide. We've upped the game in relation to how fast we change technology. We've reduced our pricing dramatically. We've done a whole lot of things by essentially learning from our peers internationally about what they wish they had done when they got into a competitive space. And we have been implementing that for the last 3 years, and I think we're becoming an extremely formidable competitor.
As a sign of who is still in charge, the JSE had 12 new listings valued at over 107 billion rand last year. And they're hopeful that their exchange will continue to grow this year, despite political headwinds and elections.
We never really give forecasts on the year ahead. But if you look at what we're facing as a country, we've got an election in the second quarter of the year. The date's still to be determined. That always brings with it a fair amount of noise, often at the more extreme ends of the rhetoric than we're even used to during the course of an ordinary year. And that makes it quite a tricky space for investors to navigate. So we are going to face that as a country. Of course, internationally, you've got Brexit, you've got what's happening in the US being very big, having very big impacts on us as a country as well. We are aiming to implement a whole lot of new projects and products that will make it easier for our clients to do business with us. And so we're very clear about how we will navigate that year as the JSE, very clear about the fact that as we do that, we need to balance our responsibility to the broader society, and so therefore looking also at the pitch of our regulatory standards, given all the noise from a regulatory perspective last year, looking at the pricing of what we're doing and continuing to trend that down, looking at the services that we offer and continuing to trend the service levels up. Because if you put the clients at the center of what you do, it actually really does help you focus on turning the dial in the right way to make what we do better for our stakeholders.
Doubts over the biggest exchange in Africa are likely to persist in 2019, a year that threatens to be one of the toughest for business in more than a decade. Nicky Newton-King is the woman at the helm and doesn't seem fazed by what is likely to be a Herculean task to keep the Johannesburg Stock Exchange towards positive territory.